All right, let's just get right into it. We're all taught to show off our talents, to stand out and really impress the people in charge. But what if I told you that's actually terrible advice? What if the very act of displaying your brilliance is the one thing that could hold you back, or even lead to your complete downfall? Today, we're exploring a really powerful and, yeah, maybe a little dangerous idea: the art of managing your own spotlight.
Just think about that for a second. You work your tail off, you get amazing results, you're creative, you're smart. Naturally, you want the people above you to see that. But what happens when your success starts to make them feel a little less successful? What happens when your bright light starts to cast a shadow on them? That's the really tricky situation we're going to unpack here.
And this, right here, is the core of it. This is the first law of power. It's not about being a slacker or hiding your skills. No. It's about being strategic. The goal isn't to dim your light, but to angle it so it makes your master's own light seem brighter. It's a delicate dance for sure. And to see what happens when you step on some toes, we need to travel back to 17th century France. So let's talk about a party to die for. Literally, this is the story of Nicolas Fouquet, a man who had it all and lost every last bit of it in a single night because he made his boss feel small. Okay, so Nicolas Fouquet, this guy was basically the man who kept the entire French kingdom running. He was brilliant, essential, and he lived a life of just incredible luxury. So when the prime minister died, everyone assumed Fouquet was the obvious choice to take his place. But King Louis XIV, the famous Sun King, he just abolished the position entirely. A huge snub. Fouquet could feel he was falling out of favor, so he came up with a grand plan to prove his loyalty and get back in the king's good graces. And his plan? Well, it was to throw the most spectacular, over-the-top party the world had ever seen, with the king himself as the guest of honor. And I mean, this was no ordinary get-together. The greatest minds in Europe were there. The entertainment was a brand new play by the one and only Molière. The dinner had foods that people in France had never even heard of. It was a masterpiece of extravagance, all of it designed to scream, "I honor you, King Louis." The party was a massive success. Everyone was calling it the most incredible event they'd ever witnessed. Fouquet must have gone to bed that night feeling like he was on top of the world. But the very next morning, he was arrested by D'Artagnan, the king's head musketeer. Just like that. His fall was immediate and absolutely brutal. He was put on trial for stealing from the treasury. Now, was that technically true? Yeah, but most of it was done on the king's behalf, which everyone kind of knew. He was found guilty and spent the next 20 years of his life in a remote prison, all by himself. 20 years, all for throwing a party. So what was the real crime here? It wasn't stealing money. It was wounding the king's massive ego. See, Louis was the Sun King. He had to be the brightest star in the sky. Fouquet's party was so magnificent, his home so stunning, that for one night, he shone brighter than the king. Every compliment a guest paid to Fouquet was like a slap in the face to King Louis. He made his master feel insecure, and for that, he paid the ultimate price. So that's what happens when you get this completely wrong. Now, let's flip the script and look at someone who got it perfectly right. Someone who used this law to achieve legendary success. The great astronomer Galileo Galilei. Now, to really get Galileo's genius, you have to understand the world he was living in. This was the age of patronage. If you were a scientist, an artist, an inventor, your entire career, your livelihood, depended on keeping powerful, wealthy rulers happy. It was a really insecure way to live, You were often paid in little gifts here and there, not a real salary. Galileo was, he was sick of it. Then, in 1610, Galileo makes one of the most important discoveries in human history. He finds the moons of Jupiter. But what he did next? That was pure political genius. First, he knew that the powerful Medici family, the rulers of Florence, used Jupiter as their family symbol. So he didn't just announce his discovery. No, he framed it as a cosmic tribute to the Medicis. He claimed the heavens themselves were celebrating the family's greatness, with the four moons representing the four Medici sons, all orbiting their great father, Cosimo II. And this just perfectly shows the difference, doesn't it? Fouquet made his spectacular party all about himself. Galileo made his world-changing discovery all about his masters. Fouquet made the king feel small and insecure. Galileo made the Medicis feel glorious, practically like gods. And the result? The Medicis made Galileo their official court philosopher and mathematician, with a full salary. He never had to beg for money again. He didn't outshine his masters. He made them outshine all of their rivals. Okay, so we've seen the tragedy and we've seen the triumph. Now, let's turn these incredible historical lessons into a practical guide for today. Here are the keys to actually applying this law in your own life. Before you even try to apply this, you've got to understand two really critical warnings. First, you can outshine a master without even trying. Seriously, if your boss is insecure, just your natural talent can feel like a direct threat. And second, never, ever get too comfortable. Just because your boss seems to like you today doesn't mean you have a free pass. Favor can vanish in an instant. So how do you actually put this into practice? Well, it's all about subtle, discreet actions. If you're smarter than your boss, play it down a bit. Ask for their advice. Make them feel like they're the wise mentor. If you have a brilliant idea, give them the credit for it in the meeting. Let them get the applause. Your goal is always to make them the sun that the whole office revolves around. By letting them shine, you, in a strange way, secure your own position and power. Now, like any law of power, this one is not absolute. There are moments when you not only can break this rule, but you probably should. This is the advanced move, what's known as the reversal. But listen, you have to be extremely careful with this one. You only ever try to outshine a master when their star is already falling. If they're weak, if they're losing influence, if they're clearly on their way out the door, then outshining them can help position you as their natural successor. But if your master is secure in their position, you've got to be patient. Power fades eventually. Let nature take its course. Playing the long game is almost always the smarter and much safer bet than a risky, premature power grab. And that really brings us to the final question, the one I want you to take away from all this. Look at your own career, at your own ambitions. When you present your successes, whose name are you trying to elevate? Is it your own? Or is it the person who holds the keys to your future? The answer to that question might just determine whether you end up in the palace or in the prison.